Sorry. So I'm going to highlight Julie's video, and then we're going to have Julie introduce herself. There we go, Julie. You're on the spotlight.
Okay.
Go ahead and introduce her. And let me, before we start with Julie, if you guys have any questions or anything, you could pop it in the chat, and I will ask Julie the questions. I'm going to probably mute all of you right now, just so we don't have a lot of distraction. And then again, just put it in the chat, and then we'll open it up at the end. We'll unmute you guys too at the end. And so that's it. So Julie, I know you came from a really small town in Texas, and then you ended up here in Alum Rock. How did that happen? You're muted.
Oh, I can't see anybody.
Wait, Julie, unmute your mic.
Test. How am I doing? Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Hi, neighbors. Thanks for joining me this afternoon, and thanks to Darlene for organizing this. I've been in San Jose for about 25 years. I moved from Texas. Don't hold that against me. I've been in California more years than in Texas. And where I grew up was just south of San Antonio in a really small town called Kennedy with one N. But I came here in my early 20s, and I came here because I met my soon-to-be husband at that point, Len, and his wonderful family. So this recipe is actually his mom's, and she was born here, but her parents were from Michoacan. So she brought over a lot of those recipes, and I was very fortunate enough to have her show me those recipes, and had the foresight to document them so that they could go on for generations to come. And the other thing that I'm very thankful for is my sister-in-law, Sylvia, who also carries on those recipes. And now the next generation, our children, my children and her children, are very interested in these recipes, as well as you all. So thank you for your interest. And today I'm going to share one of Mrs. Ramirez's most beloved recipes, pozole. So pozole is like a stew, and it's very simple, and it's very hearty, and it's very easy to make. It really is. So it consists of 4 main ingredients and 4 main steps. You have, aside from the water, you have the meat, which is pork, and I'll go into more details shortly. And then you have the chilies, you have the hominy, and then you've got a really colorful cabbage topping. So I'm going to walk you through all 4 of those steps, and I know you're going to be able to duplicate this. In addition to going through kind of the longer version today, I'm going to give you some shortcuts. These can be used that will not change the flavor. You're still going to have a fabulous soup. But if you're short on time, I'm going to mention some shortcuts. I'm also going to mention some things that you should not cut. So some must-dos and some may-dos. So I'm ready to get started. Are you all ready to start taking notes? I want to say that I will have this recipe written down and share it with Darlene, and she can post it or do whatever with it. So take notes if you want. You'll have the video for reference, but let's get started.
And I'll write down in the chat some of the stuff. If she says an interesting chili pepper or something she uses, I'll put that in chat. And remember, you can always ask questions in the chat.
So the first part that I'm going to go over is the meat. So because the cooking takes about 3 hours, I started cooking this earlier. This is a pork butt roast. It should be for this size, and granted, it's a very big size, but I don't know how to do small. You'd want a 5 to 7 pound pork butt roast with bone in. That's the non-negotiable. You got to have some bone in there. The bone is what really gives your soups flavor, no matter what kind of soup you're cooking. So pork butt roast, bone in, that's what I'm using today. here's a shortcut. If you don't have time, because really, in my opinion, the hardest part is cutting the meat. But that's what I usually do. A shortcut is go down to one of your Mexican markets here in the neighborhood, and they have a pozole mix, and it's just already cut for you. It's already, you know, in the right bite size pieces. So just get maybe about 4 pounds of that. And then to add that bone, you can get a little bit of, they'll have neck bones there or short ribs. So you can get 4 pounds of the pozole mix, and then a pound or pound and a half of the short ribs. That's what I would recommend if you're short on time. So this has been boiling for about an hour and a half. The meat will be tender now, but we're going to keep adding ingredients to that. When it's time, I'll be using a bouillon to season the broth. I use any chicken bouillon, beef bouillon, whatever bouillon you have. I like this one. It's actually tomato with chicken flavor, but you can do the straight chicken bouillon, or even beef bouillon would be fine. I also use this seasoning packet, which has oregano, chili flakes, and even some dried lime in it. And it's called Menudo Seasoning. So menudo is a very similar type of soup, but instead of pork, it's tripe. So therefore, this lends itself very well to pozole. And it's got everything mixed in. So it's like really, it's a shortcut. The other seasoning that I use, if I need to add a little bit more chili flavor, I just have this on standby. It's my favorite chili powder from Gebhardt. You can get this at the local Mexican market too. I've seen it at Cardenas, for example. So this is my favorite chili powder. It's a chili powder mix. So that's the meat and the stew. We're gonna leave that alone for a little while. I'm not ready to add anything yet. The next thing I wanna mention is the hominy. So super easy. Hardest part here is opening the can. At the store, you're going to see different styles of hominy. This is the Mexican style hominy. They'll also have white hominy. I have no idea what the difference is. I get whatever's on sale. To me, it doesn't matter. I open it. I rinsed it a little bit because it's a little frothy. So I rinsed it out a little bit, but left it in there. And when the time comes, I'm just going to pour it in the pot. So that's on standby. The next thing, if you remember, I said there was 4 parts. So the third part is the chili. Okay, here's where it takes, if you have a little bit more time, you can start from chili pods. So come over here. This is a chili pod, a dry chili pod. I use 3 flavors. I use the New Mexican chili and the Californian chili and the Guajillo chili. For a pot that size, I use about 24 chilies. And this is where it takes a little bit of a little bit of time. If you've got extra time, I would recommend starting from the dry pod. If you're short on time, how are you at opening another can? This is enchilada sauce. Works fine. I get the mild. Don't get the hot. It'll be in my opinion too hot. I like using the enchilada sauce. Las Palmas also has a chili sauce. To me, I go with the enchilada. It's a little thicker than just the plain chili sauce. So I prefer Las Palmas enchilada sauce if I'm running low on time. But since this was a demo, I'm going next level with y'all. So let me get the chilies. I'm going to bring them right over here and I'll tell you what I did.
What size is your hominy can?
It's the largest one. Let me look at the size. £6 pounds.
Wow.
Teasdale is the brand. They have a couple of different brands. All right, back to the chilies. So
Can you name the 4 chilies again?
it's 3 chilies that I prefer to use. If you use one, I would recommend the guajillo. The guajillo is it's not very spicy, but it still has a really rich chili flavor. Then, because this is my mother-in-law's recipe, she loved California chilies. That was her preferred chili. So I always have to throw that in. And my father-in-law, Mr. Ramirez, his family's from New Mexico. So I throw in some New Mexico chilies. Literally, that's how I decided what chilies I'm going to use. Most recipes show the guajillo. This one is a guajillo, but I throw in those other 2 because it's a Ramirez family recipe, and I have to honor my 2 in-laws whom I love very much. This is how you clean chili. So you're going to get the dry chili pod, and I recommend using gloves. When I did my 24, I did have plastic latex gloves on, which we happen to have a lot of during these COVID times. So you tear the stem off, just like that. And then you take some shears. I cut it open. And you're going to remove the seeds and the vein. And it removes very easily. If I can just get something to shake it off, I'll show you. So you just take it and you shake it. Take all those, there's going to be a little vein in there. If I had gloves on, I'd be using my hands to kind of scrape these off.
The question is, which of the chilies is the hottest?
The New Mexico chili is the hottest. California chili is medium, and the guajillo is pretty mild. And that's why I mix them too. So there's your chili. I set it aside. I repeat it through all of them that I have. And then I put them in water and take them over to the stove. This is important. Once it starts to boil, I turn it off the heat, cover it, and let it seep for about 20 to 30 minutes. If you keep boiling it, it's kind of like tea. It turns bitter. So you never want to boil your chilies. I will remove it from the heat, cover it, and just walk away. I'll check on my meat, same thing. It's boiling, I cover it, I just walk away. Let them do their thing. You started it, let it do its thing. All right, let's move on.
Let me add, there's a question. So you said you put in 24 chilies. What's the division of them?
I put in, the main one is the guajillo. So there's 12 guajillo. And then I divided the other ones, 6 California and 6 New Mexico. All right, and this is what they look like when they're soft. So they're very pliable. And then what's going to happen is you can either use a blender or a food processor. So let's take care of that step right now. I'm going to pull this out so you can see it a little better. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in about a quarter onion and a clove of garlic. So I'll do that in just a second, but let's just transfer all the chilies into the food processor. Might need to do this in 2 batches. Let's see how they fit. Okay, let me get the pot out of the way. I'm going to also add some salt. This is how my grandma used to measure. It's about half a teaspoon. Yeah, a little bit more for good luck. your lid on. Oh, you got to add a little bit of liquid actually. Glad I didn't forget that step. Bring my pot back. So here's another tip. I tasted this and it was not bitter. You have to taste it. Sometimes even if you don't boil it, it might be bitter and it'll just put a bad taste in your whole food. If it were bitter, I'd be using the chicken broth. But because this tasted fine to me, I'm gonna add about a cup of liquid. Let me add a little bit more. A lot of this you just gotta eyeball. So that's about a cup and a half. It's out of the way.
I think an important thing that Julie just mentioned right now that a lot of people do not do is taste things along the way. You have to taste things along the way, each ingredient in each step. Very important. Go ahead. Is it? Oh, he muted her. That was very sweet. While she's muted and moving that, I'll mention something about the New Mexico chilies. So a lot of them call them hatch chili as well. So hatch chili is not a particular type of chili. Hatch is a region, okay? And it means that the chilies were grown in that region, the region of Hatch in New Mexico. Very similar to like Sonoma. Like you have Sonoma wines and you can grow different types of wines in Sonoma, Merlot, Chardonnays, whatever. You could grow them in Sonoma and those are Sonoma wines. That's what Hatch chili means. Doesn't mean a particular type of chili. It just means that it's grown in that region, which just like Sonoma makes the grapes really good for wine, Hatch is a really good growing region for chilies. So that's what Hatch chilies are, because a lot of people are confused about that. Go ahead, Julie. You need to unmute yourself though. Well, oh, she's still blizzing.
All right, so I want the chili puree to be as smooth as possible. I'll let you take a look at it now. You can see it's a little chunky in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strain it. Let me get one tool. It's kind of messy and chili stains. So like if I weren't on camera, I would definitely have my apron on. So right now, just wish me luck because I love this shirt. All right. So. And you have to be very patient. It's so worth the wait. Just let it do its thing while it strains.
Sometimes I stir, yeah, like how she's doing. And that helps.
Yeah, this will take just a minute. And while it does that, I can tell you just a little story about my mother-in-law, Irma, whom some of you maybe knew because she and Mr. Ramirez, Leonard Ramirez, they lived in this neighborhood since like the 1950s. Is when they moved to San Jose. And I moved over here, as I mentioned, in my early 20s. And she was just one of the best cooks that I had ever been introduced to. And she thought it was really cute that I was interested in her recipes, you know? So she invited me into her kitchen and would just tell me stories about family recipes from her in-laws and from her own parents. And she taught me these family recipes. This chili base is really the foundation for a lot of New Mexican and kind of Southwest cooking. So this same chili base can be transformed into enchilada sauce. You can also use it in tamales. So it just is very versatile. And I was not used to working with dried chilies coming from Texas. Tex-Mex cooking is very different from Mexican cooking. That's a whole other show, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Whole other
won't get-
conversation. That's a lot.
But my grandmothers in particular, and my mom are also fabulous cooks. But in Texas, we use just a lot of chili powder, lots of chili powder. So it's just a different technique. All right, so what I'm finding, and this, if you start working with chilies, you'll get used to it. Just kind of adapting to the circumstance. What I'm finding is that this is still too dense. So some of it's strained, but I'm gonna have to put it back in the food processor to go a little bit more. I can just tell it's too thick. And normally I'd let it go for a good 4 minutes. Again, very messy process, but necessary. Hence, that's why you have this as backup. If you're like, oh, I don't want to mess with all that. Yeah, it's tedious. So I'm just going to put it back and repeat. But it's kind of fun. And I find cooking actually very relaxing. I tell my kids all the time, cooking is easy. Cooking is fun. The cleaning, not so much, right? But to me, well, some people like cleaning, but to me, the fun part is in the creation. I'm going to add a little bit more water. It's about half a cup. And let's go another round, see if it thins out. Look at my hands.
While she's doing that, I'm assuming he's going to mute again. People are going to think I'm a weirdo because I actually like to wash the dishes by hand, mind you. I don't even hardly use my dishwasher because I find it very relaxing. It's like, nobody gets near me when I'm washing dishes because they don't want to help. So it's like my little time of peace. So I actually don't mind washing dishes unless it's a lot. But so she's just liquefying it more, so it's more liquid. That's why she added more broth. I don't know if she added more broth. I add broth. You can use broth or.
Let's check on it again. If you have a blender works as well, but because of the volume, this holds more. So that's why I went with this tool. Just a little bit more.
Is yours, are you on? Can you hear me, Julie? Or are you muted? I would say either she has the quietest thing or she's muted. I can't tell. Ask her for anything.
All right, let's try it. Let's get the strainer out again. Put it on my handy dandy bowl. Watch the blade. Again, it's just being very patient. If I had an assistant, like another pair of hands, I'd move on to something else. But this is just kind of the process. Letting it drain and strain and leaving all the pulp behind. It wouldn't be the worst thing if I didn't strain it. It's a soup, it would get mixed in. This step is just kind of the step that you take if you've got the time, and in the end, it makes it just for a smoother soup. So you can see kind of the pulp being left behind. And you can see the smoothness down below. So we're going to work with what we have already just for time. And then I can always go back and do the rest of that. But I just want you to contrast kind of the smoothness of this chili compared to the pulp that's left behind. And you can repeat those steps with your blender or food processor as many times as you want to get how much chili you have. So let's see how much that yielded. What I'm going for is about, if I had about 2 cups, that would be ideal. This is about 1.5 cups. So once I finish this, it's going to give me about 2 cups. So that's just so if you're keeping count, 24 chilies yields about 2 cups of the chili. Let me rinse off my hands and we're going to go back over to the meat, add the chili to it, and then the hominy. So let me just wash up real fast.
Yeah, because she has a pretty top on. So as my mother always used to say, and I know Julie wears aprons, I always wear an apron in the kitchen. I know a lot of people don't, but my grandma used to make us all aprons ever since we were little kids. And she said a lady always wears an apron in the kitchen. So we have always worn aprons in our family.
Well, I assure you, I'm a lady, but like I said, I just want to mess up the look. Okay, so let's check on our meat. Here we go. It looks beautiful. Let's add the chili first, because one step that you don't want to skip is skimming the fat. Pork is obviously a fatty meat. I can see some fat pockets like right now, but once I add the chili, the fat puddles are going to be a little bit more apparent. And I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes taking that fat off. So there we go. Try not to get in your camera way. I'm adding the chili. Stirring it up. And there's voila, your red color. There's that bone I was talking about, and see how the meat is practically falling off. It is falling off the bone, which is what we want. Before I serve it, I'll take that meat out. So let's let it settle and see now that little fat pockets are a lot more visible. And I spend a good amount of time today. I'm gonna skimp on it, but I spend a good amount of time just doing this, kind of skimming the fat off of the top, because I don't like a oily soup. And sometimes at restaurants, if we order it, it's very greasy because they don't have the time to do this. But for your family, I would encourage you to spend as much time as you need kind of skimming off the fat. That's what that's like. All right, so then you're gonna go ahead and plop in your hominy. This is gonna be challenging because I don't wanna get, I don't want it coming back on me. So just very carefully on the edge almost, dump in the hominy. A little bit more left down there. So the hominy, it's corn, and corn is a staple in Mexican food. So what are some other staple ingredients to Mexican food? You've got corn. Think of lots of dishes made with corn. This pozole, your tamales, right? Those huaraches that Darlene was talking about earlier. Corn is in various recipes in various forms. Other staple ingredients for Mexican cooking include your garlic and cumin or comino, and oregano. So if you want to start cooking Mexican food, have those spices in your pantry along with your salt and pepper. Very, very basic ingredients. Lots of Mexican recipes have those ingredients in them. So now what we have to do is we got to turn up the heat again. And I want this to come to a boil, because when it does that, the corn is going to start releasing starches and your soup will get a little thicker. So you don't want to rush your process. You got to let it cook, I would say, another hour. So that corn can release the starch. For today's purpose, we're not going to go that whole hour, right? I'll show you the final presentation in a little bit, but we're going to turn the heat up there. I want to, at this point, add my seasoning. So at this point, I will have skimmed off the fat, because if I put in the seasoning before I skim the fat, I'm going to just be taking it right back out. So skim all the fat off that you can to your liking, and then you take your envelope, and I'm going to pour in about half. So this envelope, they have it even at Lucky. These little envelopes are very popular. You'll find them at most grocery stores. It's 0.75 ounces. I'm going to put in about half of the envelope. Again, it contains oregano, lemon, dried lemon, and chili flakes. So let's drop those in.
There's a couple questions for you. So can you make it with beef or chicken? Which is a yes.
Yes. Chicken. There's chicken pozole and pork pozole. I have not heard of actually, there was a video last night. I saw somebody make beef pozole. So it's just meat and hominy. You can add whatever you want. The traditional pozole is made with pork, but you can also do chicken. And a really quick cheat is, even if you get like a rotisserie chicken and debone it, and you've got your broth that you're making with chicken stock, and then you add a Las Palmas and throw in your hominy and shredded chicken, your family's gonna think you slaved for 3 hours, and it's gonna take you all of 30 minutes, and it's really, really good. I've done that before too. So here's this.
And I'll mention vegan pozole just while we're at it, because I know there's people that want that. And it is, if you don't put the meat in, you can substitute mushroom. You can just leave it with the hominy in the soup, or you can put mushrooms in, tofu, whatever, if you're making vegan pozole. So another question is, do you not cook the chili in oil before placing it with the meat?
I don't. That's an extra step. I've seen that on videos. My mother-in-law never did that. So I don't. And if my point is to kind of skim off the fat, I just feel like, why should I put more in? If I were making enchiladas, yes, I would do that step. But for this, I think pouring it in is just fine. My mother-in-law never fried or cooked the chili sauce apart from it being cooked in here even more here. It's already boiled, so.
Yeah, can you, because I think we skipped a step, Julie, in the very beginning, how did you prepare your meats? When you cut it, then we skipped a part about you pre-cooking the meats.
Okay.
Yeah,
I apologize. You're absolutely right. I sure did. So once the meat, it's in a big hunk, it was a 6-pound roast. I cut it, and then I put a little bit of oil in here just so it wouldn't stick, and I browned it. Some people don't brown their meat. I browned it and then added salt and pepper and threw in a garlic clove and half an onion. I browned it, and then that took about 15 minutes. And then I added water. This is about 16 cups of water, half of the pot. So then I added the water. Thank you for reminding me of that. Sorry about that. But you can brown your meat. In my opinion, it cuts back on the froth and it enhances the flavor. Some folks they'll use their diced meat, throw it in the pan, and add the water and boil it. Either way is just fine, but I told you the reasons why I brown my meat.
I always brown my meat before. I think it tastes better. I just think.
Any other questions, Darlene?
Let's see. How long do you cook it for?
So you don't want to cook the pozole more than 3.5 hours because your pork will start falling apart. I cook it 1 hour on its own, 1 to 1.5 hours on its own. This was a lot of meat, and I was waiting on the stove call, so it actually cooked for 1.5 hours, just the meat with the seasoning and the water, boiled on its own. Then when I add the hominy, I'm gonna cook it for another hour to 90 minutes. I actually cook it for like an hour and then to where it's at a pretty medium boil. And then after that, I'll put it on low and I'll keep it on the stovetop all day. You know, people are just coming and eating as they want it. But overall, you want to cook it, or you can cook it. It's very forgiving. 3.5 hours. Between all the steps, plan on your prep time being 3 hours because it's a lot. You have to monitor. But it's easy because like you put the meat on, you let it boil, you go on to something else. It's not that it's active working time, but the process is going to take 3.5 hours. So just to repeat, the first boil of the meat is about 1 hour. Then you add your chili puree, whether it's Las Palmas or from your dried chili. Then you skim. Then you add your hominy, and now let it cook another 60, 90 minutes on a rolling boil, medium rolling boil. I'm gonna taste it for seasoning. Then I would cover it up and just let it do its thing, let it cook. But right now I want to test it for salt because at this point is when I would add the bouillon.
So I don't use bouillon. I use chicken broth. So when you use chicken broth, you definitely need to add more salt. Bouillon is very salty, so you don't have to add as much salt. And then again, it's very important, like what Julie's doing, tasting it. Always taste your food, people, before you serve it. Taste it along the way and taste your food before you serve it to people so you can adjust. And then Julie, did you set up, I'm going to put a list of the toppings because one of the most important things about pozole is how you serve it. Okay. So yeah. Julie will talk about that right now.
Yeah, that's coming up next. Right now I'm adding about a tablespoon and a half of the chicken, the bouillon. And this is what the salt is, right? It adds the salt and that chicken flavor. So it's just to taste. Salt to taste. All right. So now I'm going to cover that up. I've got it on medium-high heat. And we're going to let it come to a boil, cover it, and let it do its thing. Let's talk about the topping real fast. Where do you want me to stand now? Okay, so beautiful, refreshing topping. And this is what I love about the pozole. It is like adding a hot, steamy bowl, but then you got a salad on top. Now, in American cooking, you don't usually mix like your cold with something hot like that, but guess what? It works. And if I don't do it, I really miss it because this is actually one of my favorite parts of the pozole. So I've got shredded cabbage, cilantro, chopped, onion, and also radishes, which gives it a crunch and a little bit, you know how radish tastes, a little bit of spice. The limes are for afterwards. So some people just serve it like this. Everybody can go and add their own, whatever they want to their bowl. My mother-in-law, she had a unique way of serving it. She would just toss it in a salad all together, all at once. I prefer it that way. It saves counter space. And then if I have any left over the next day, it's a great salad just by itself. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So here, we're just going to take some of the ingredients, toss it in the cabbage, and you're going to see how pretty it looks. This is half of an onion here that I chopped. It's half of a cabbage, half an onion, cilantro. Any any size of the ingredients will do. It's just to taste. But look at how pretty. Look at how pretty and colorful. And frankly, I go by the color and the ratio of the ingredients. Like this, I'm like, I want more red. I love red. So I'm gonna add some more radish. And then look at how beautiful this little tossed topping is. Very simple, all mixed together, ready to serve on top of your bowl. So shall we make a bowl and you can see what the presentation would look like?
Mm-hmm.
Let me get a bowl. Over there, Papa.
I've never seen that before. It mixed up like that. That this is.
I know. My mother-in-law was like innovation. She was an innovator ahead of her time. All right.
I
So
love your bowl.
we're going to pretend that this has been boiling another hour. You will notice that the broth will be a little thicker at that point for the reasons I stated earlier. But because this is a Zoom, we're just going to go ahead and act like it's all cooked. I mean, it's nothing's raw at this point. The corn, I mean, it's just not as tender as the way I would regularly, want to eat it. So that ain't going to hurt you. So we're going to get some decent broth in there. So you've got your broth, big hearty chunks of pork in here. All right, let me put one more chunk because look at that, beautiful. Let's put it back on its stand and let's put the topping. I would take my topping, just put some right on top of there, garnish it with a piece of lime that I would actually squirt when I'm ready to eat. Let's put it right here. And there is your simple, it really wasn't that hard, I would say, beautiful bowl of pozole.
And then the other thing that people serve with it on the side is usually corn tortillas or bolillos, which is like a Mexican French bread type of thing. So a lot of times people serve that on the side as well. That looks beautiful, and I love your bowl. Is there any other questions that people have? What's the difference between, pozole verde?
Yeah, I don't know how to make pozole verde. Sorry, Darlene.
It's just green chilies. That's the difference. Instead of using red chilies, you're using green chilies.
Darlene can give you a whole dissertation, I'm sure.
That was it. Instead of using red chilies, it's green chilies. That was my answer. How much water do you put in the pan with the meat? You mean in the pot? Yeah. Somebody else asked that too. What's the ratio of, like, you putting 4 cups of water or in there?
So this was a 6-pound roast and I used 16 cups of water. The important thing is that most of the time I just go to the sink and turn it on, but because I knew somebody was going to ask me that, I actually measured it. You want to make sure that the meat is entirely covered and go up about 2 to 3 inches. My family likes a lot of broth. So I go up, there's the mound of meat. I'll go up another couple or 3 inches. When you do this over and over again, you're going to realize, as I said before, that it's very forgiving. If it's too spicy because of your chili that you added, your chili puree, then add more water. If it's not spicy enough, open a can of Las Palmas. If it's too salty, add a little bit more water. If it's not salty enough, get yourself some bouillon in there. So forgiving. You make it to your taste. I like mine a little spicy. Hence, I have that chili powder there on reserve. So I'm going to add that in a little bit, but that's going to take some time. You got to let it kind of cook some more, and then I'll do another taste test and put the final touches on it. But very forgiving, very easy, very hard and I know your family is gonna love it.
Yeah, so somebody was asking about the chili.
Any other questions, Darlene?
So, you guys can unmute yourselves now too. So if you have a question, but Lee was asking about the dried chilies. I put a link right now if you guys want to look at the link. And the link, if you click on it, it shows dried chilies and fresh chilies side by side. So you can see, because jalapeno, for instance, is a smoked dried jalapeno is a chipotle, a poblano is an ancho, and I won't go through all of them, but if you click on that link, you'll see the chilies, types of chilies. So they want to see the dried chilies, and then can you show the dried chilies and what the types were?
Yes.
So there's a ton of dried chilies in the store. And again, it's to people's preference. People have different preferences that they have. Think of it like anything else. You could have a certain preference of an apple, and there's, 10 different varieties of apple. Well, there's more than that, but there's a bunch in the store. And some people like sweet, some people like tart.
All right.
The chilies are the same. There's different flavor. Go ahead.
So this is how I store my dried chilies. Just in a Ziploc bag, I take out as much air as possible. And I have 2 in this bag, 1 in this bag. This one is my California chilies, so I label it. They all look very, very similar. It comes in a bag, but let me open these because you can see the label. So they're clearly labeled what type they are. Right there. This one, I don't know, the label must have fallen off. But these are my California. So I just labeled my Ziploc. I keep them in their package so that I can know the label. And if it falls off, I label it. You can research for yourself which ones are the hottest, but for your reference, New Mexico chilies are pretty hot. Usually this season, but usually the New Mexico chilies are the hottest. The Californians are medium, and to me, the Guajillos are mild. And I think that's why a lot of restaurants use Guajillo chilies, because they don't want to serve things too hot or spicy for their clients. You want to serve a mild one, and then people can always add salsa on top to their liking. But the Guajillo is a very good chili for, just all the way around. And then if you want to add a little heat, mix in those other ones.
So I put a link down here right now. Again, it is a chili heat levels. So it has a different chilies and then the level of heat that they have. So if you look at that last link I just put up, so if you want to know that.
And the other thing that I've learned about Guajillos is that you'll have Guajillo picante and then like a mild version. So the Guajillos, if they're the spicy ones, it'll say. If not, to me, they're pretty mild.
Yeah. So does anybody else have any other questions? You can just unmute yourself. Excuse me, I can't talk. So I think that is it. I'm going to go back to gallery view then. Okay, cool. Well, does you guys have any questions about anything else? Let us know. Unmute yourselves. Otherwise, we can thank Julie now for this great thing. You can.
Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Julie and Darlene, for setting this up. This was awesome, and I can't wait to try it.
Awesome.
You're
Well,
gonna love it.
I'm going to get a bowl of it right now. I could.
It needs to cook for another hour, Darlene. You have to be patient.
That's okay, lunch. So that's going to be my dinner. Now, all of you that want the chocolate bag, I'm putting it in my courtyard, and I put my address out there. Those of you that don't know where I live, so you can go to my courtyard. I'll put it in there again. And
All of which is Greek to me.
yeah, and pick up the chocolates. I have Mexican hot chocolate bag. So what happened is I bought a bunch of bulk hot chocolate. because I was going to do chocolate tastings, but of course, the pandemic kind of squashed that idea. So I had a bunch of bulk chocolates. So I put it in bags for you guys to get some free ones. So I'm going to put them outside. They're already done. I'm going to put it outside right now so you guys can stop by and get them. And that's it. So thank all of you. The next class we have is a zucchini. Linda Rodriguez, I believe, is doing it, and she's doing zucchini ravioli. So they're like a vegetarian dish, and where you use a zucchini instead of pasta to do it. So it's gluten-free vegetarian dish. So that will be the next class, and it's not next weekend. It's the weekend. I think it's not till March 28th or something. So thank all of you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
It was a great presentation.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was
Very
fun.
Thank you.
Bye.